Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Elestrals video for you. So I normally like to alternate between Elestrals and Pokemon Pocket. I alternate day to day which video I do, but I am doing two Elestrals videos in a row today because the new Elestrals card restrictions / ban list got dropped. No new cards got banned, but there are some things to talk about here for sure. So let's see, what do we have here? Drataya and Sparkit. We're already in Tartarus, so these are our only two banned cards. And Earthquake, Lavalith, and Resting on Your Laurels, these three cards here were already limited. Meaning that we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 limits, actually technically 7 limits, as well as a semi-limit to talk about here. I'm going to be giving my thoughts on this ban list here, the individual hits, what I think could have maybe been done a little bit differently, and maybe some of the meta implications moving forward. So let's go ahead and dive right on in. First limit we're going to talk about right off the bat here is Equilinks. Definitely give this one 2 thumbs up. I definitely like the Equilinks limit. I think pretty much all of us knew that Equilinks is a card that definitely did need to be at 1 copy, right? It's a repeatable rune destruction. I'm trying to think, is there any other card that in the game that is even repeatable rune destruction? Of course, we have plenty of cards that destroy runes, and in Moonrise there are cards that destroy multiple runes in one go, but as far as a card that can turn after turn keep destroying runes, Equilinks is just so strong. I definitely think that, yeah, in a vacuum, this card... Well, I don't know about in a vacuum necessarily. Of course, it is always contingent on the other cards in the deck that it's being used in. Earth, of course, was the main one. Although, to be fair, Scrap was also a thing. Equilinks was kind of just that good that it could be used outside of Earth as well. So in this case, it might actually be Equilinks, might in a vacuum just be a little bit too strong. It's a Nexuser, again, it's a very strong effect. 4/3 is a very good body for that type of effect as well. And it's in Earth, which already has like some of the best one spirits in the game, another of which is actually on this list. So we are, of course, also coming off the results of the latest and largest webcam tournament held on Sunday the 1st with over 100 people. And the top 4 was 1 heal, and then I think it was 4 Earth, 3 Thunder? Or was it 3 Earth, 4 Thunder? It was one or the other. I don't exactly remember off the top of my head. But yeah, you're going to see those results kind of reflected a lot in these limits here. All right, next up we have Ferrogeist to 1. So this is a speculative limit, right? Because you might be looking at Ferrogeist at 1 and being like, what is this card doing right now that it's such a big problem? The answer is nothing. There's actually nothing this card is currently doing that makes it a problem. However, with the Moonrise set on the release, in particular with Lunar Phase Full Moon, there are a lot of people who are speculating, among other cards, by the way. It's not just Full Moon. Full Moon is just one of the bigger ones that allow you to cheat out a 3-spirit Lunar Elestral, right? But a lot of people have been speculating that Ferrogeist is going to be quite good as a result. Here's the thing, though. I'm not as big a fan of this hit. I'm honestly not. I think the main reason that I'm not is that because it is speculative, and here's the thing, right? I've played enough different card games for enough period of time. For those who don't know, by the way, I don't just do Elestrals and Pokemon. My main game is Yu-Gi-Oh! And actually over on my main channel, Hexlex, that's where I post Master Duel every day, with over 18,000 subs on that channel as well. But, you know, I've been playing Yu-Gi-Oh! For like 20 years at this point, right? I've been playing TCGs in general, because I've also been playing Pokemon and Magic, among other things, other digital TCGs as well, like Hearthstone and Legends of Runeterra. I've been doing this for a long time, and across every TCG, one historic fact that has always remained true is that more often than not, a lot more often than not, players are not that great at evaluating in speculation without actual playtesting how good a card will be. There's so many times in every single set release of just about every TCG ever, you'll see multiple instances of people hyping up a card that doesn't end up doing as well as people thought, or a card that is missed that is actually going to end up being really good. So that's kind of a lot of the reason why I'm really not a big fan of the Ferrogeist limit. Especially because stuff like Lavalith and Earth and Thunder has been running around like relatively unchecked. In Thunder's case, they did at least ban Spark it, right? But all this stuff has been running around, remaining relatively unchecked for so long in the game. To now, like, all of a sudden start curbing, which I know if you want to set that precedent, I guess fine, you have to start at some point, but I don't think it's a great precedent to set, because we're not even 100%, although I think it is very likely, personally, I want to make that clear, that I'm not saying Pharaohgeist is going to be bad even, after Moonrise. I'm just saying that we don't know that it's going to be so good that this card needs to be limited for sure. I'm not a fan of speculative hits like before a pack comes out. I'm really not the biggest fan of it. I think what A-Drive and the team have said is that they're going to go like set release, ban list, set release, ban list. Like there's going to be like a ban list update between every set release. We really could have just limited Pharaohgeist in that in-between set release after Moonrise if it ended up being a problem, right? But that's the thing, we don't even know yet. Also, if Pharaohgeist is a huge problem, like of the level of like Earth and Thunder and Lavalith and all this other stuff right now, is limiting it even going to be as that effective at curbing it? Because Pharaohgeist rather is very searchable, especially post Moonrise with the I can't remember the name of the card. It's like Exaltus but for Lunar, but for Spectral Elestrals, and it can search the Pharaohgeist, if I'm remembering right. So yeah, with this card being searchable anyway, does it being at 1 even matter? Maybe decks that would be on Pharaohgeist would have only ended up playing 1 anyway. This limit could be effectively meaningless, I don't know. It's the fact that we don't know that, again, I'm not the biggest fan of, personally. Lavalith is already at 1. I still think this is a great hit, by the way. Earthquake's already at 1. I also think this is a great hit. Arcalith at 1. I'm iffy on this one. I don't know. So, okay. I think we should have had other hits to Thunder before Arcalith, because there are other Thunder cards that need to get hit before Arcalith. And then I think if those hits weren't enough, then we should have limited Arcalith. I think limiting Arcalith alongside everything else here is a bit much. But I will say that Arcalith isn't the most undeserved Thunder limit on this list. Our next card here, Race to the Top, I think actually is. There's the meme floating around, the Family Guy meme right now of like Chris pointing the gun at Race to the Top, which is Peter, but then not pointing it at Cryoblast, which definitely makes a lot of sense when you think about it in that regard. Take what I said about Arcalith and apply it like 3 times over to the Race to the Top, right? If you're already going to hit Elechic and Zeus and Arcalith, did we really also need to hit Race to the Top? It feels like a bit much. It also feels like there are other Thunder cards that are not here that definitely should have been hit before Race to the Top, and also before Arcalith, and also before Elechic. You probably know what card I'm talking about, but we'll get to that in a moment. So next hit is Elechic limit. So here's the thing. I am not opposed to an Elechic limit, but I do still, I'll just talk about it at this point. And it's something that I think we're all kind of thinking. Astrabbit really just needs to get, if not banned, limited. Card absolutely needs to be hit in some regard. The fact that you just auto-include it and at least 2 Thunder Spirits in every Elestrals deck is a bit ridiculous. And I know A-Drive has said, I know there's that comment I've seen from him that, like, he says the reason that they're not thinking about limiting Astrabbit just yet is that they think over time less decks will splash it, and that could be the case if decks end up getting tools akin to Astrabbit. That said, I don't see a world where even post Moonrise, like, decks aren't just playing, including Lunar, 3 Astrabbit, right? Well, I mean, that's a given. That's like it's super a given. But here's the other thing, like, I have a hard time seeing a world where set 5 gives every deck equally balanced tools to the point where they don't really play Astrabbit anymore, given how good Astrabbit is. Like, Elestrals is already a game that, this is something that a lot of people are figuring out very quickly. Elestrals is already a game where you are more incentivized to play good cards of a bunch of different spirit types as opposed to just a lot of one spirit type, unless that spirit type has a lot of good cards like Earth and Thunder, right? So in that regard, I don't really ever see a world where a card that has 5 defense and has a better than, draw a card when it receives effect. I have a hard time seeing a world where that just doesn't see play in every deck. I don't know. I can't imagine the tools that every spirit type would have to get that wouldn't also just like, I don't know. Maybe I'm totally willing to be wrong about that. Maybe we do actually live in a world where Astrabbit doesn't need to get hit. I have an extremely difficult time seeing us living in that world. So that's where I come back to the Elechic limit. So I like the Elechic limit if Astrabbit isn't going to get hit. If Astrabbit does get hit, then Elechic becomes a lot more difficult for decks like Earth to splash. It takes a lot more of a commitment. That said, I can still see a world where they would do that anyway, especially if Astrabbit's at 1. Like, if Astrabbit's at 1, you're still just playing it with 1 Thunder Spirit, right? Like, in every single deck. Again, I have a difficult time imagining a world where that's not the case. Maybe even you still play 2 to re-enchant. Like, honestly, I think that's still a huge consideration. Let me take a sip of water here. I'm going to open my sparkling water. But, yeah, no, so as far as, like, Elechic goes, yeah, I don't think the limit is completely undeserved. I could see a world where Astrabbit even gets banned and, decks like Earth still go way out of the way to play Elechic for Demeter. I don't think they do now that it's limited. I don't think it's a bad hit. I don't think overall it's a bad hit. I would have definitely liked to have seen Astrabbit on here again instead of Arclith and Race to the Top. I think if Astrabbit was at 1 or 0 here, we wouldn't have needed to hit either of those cards. We didn't need to hit Race to the Top anyway, let's be real. Arclith, again, I'm a little bit on the fence of, but I'm a little more leaning on the side of like, yeah, the limit's fine. I mean, I think the limit is fine. I'm not like opposed to it. I just think it's a little bit less deserved than Elechic. Resting on Your Laurels, of course, was already limited and deserved. Viscerous to 2. Yeah, that's completely fine. I've seen some people say they don't like this. I think it's largely the Yu-Gi-Oh crowd that tends not to like semi-limits. Listen, there's a whole separate argument for if semi-limits are a good thing as far as like being a minor consistency hit. I think they are, especially in best of 1 formats. That's my personal take. But when you're dealing with a card that refers to other copies of itself, like Viscerous does, then yeah, the semi-limit makes a lot more sense. And Viscerous really needed it. And here's the thing, Viscerous can't go to 1, right? Because that wouldn't make any sense. Viscerous has to be at 2, if not 2, it's got to be at 0. We might actually live in a world where Viscerous has to be at 0, but I think now that the card's at 2, it's a lot less splashable. Or at least if you are splashing at this point, it's a bit more of a commitment to do so. Because, like, we were seeing Thunder decks, topping the last tournament. I know MBT's deck, well, he was on Thunder. I think he was on Thunder that just played 3 Viscerous anyway. Yeah, I was about to start testing 3 Viscerous in, like, pretty much every single deck I play. Just because, like, you're already playing Earths for Earthquake in just about every deck anyway. And as I've said on many different videos on this channel, Viscerous is just a 1-card game ender. If left unchecked, a Viscerous that gets to swing in every turn will completely just walk over your opponent and end the game by itself. So this card getting hit makes a lot of sense, and again, you can't put this card to 1, so it's either got to be 2 or 0. So 2 is definitely a good spot for it, I think. Alright, so here we have some temporary limits. 2 temporary limits for both Demeter and Zeus. These limits will no longer take effect on January 31st, which I believe is when Moonrise releases. Or is it afterward? I actually don't remember off the top of my head the exact release date of Moonrise. I think that is the release date there. But anyway. Let's see. Demeter and Zeus to 1. I think Zeus to 1 is definitely warranted. I think Demeter to 1 is likely warranted as well. I don't know how I feel about the hits being temporary. temporary limits are an interesting idea. I don't think that they are inherently an awful idea. But I don't know if I understand. Like, I understand the idea is that... I guess the idea is that once the Moonrise set drops, they want, like... Because Earth and Thunder are so dominant right now, but when Moonrise comes out, the meta will be different. So they want to give Earth and Thunder some of their tools back, I think is the idea, when Moonrise comes out. I also don't think there's anything wrong with, because again, if we're doing a list between every set release, I don't think there's anything wrong with limiting these cards now and then just unlimiting them on the next list if you need to. I think sometimes the designers of these lists get kind of like caught up in the idea of like integrity, for maybe lack of a better word, where it's like, oh, well, if we hit a card one list and then unhit it the next, like, what does that say? That we just like flip-flop? And like, I think it's fine to do that. Like, I would rather see that happen than not. I don't think that any card should remain on a list for any arbitrary period of time, right? Simply because it might look bad if we unlimit it right away. You know, I don't think that's the case personally. I don't know. Again, I don't inherently hate it. I don't inherently hate the idea of putting a card on the list, but saying it's only going to be there for a set period of time. I'm open to the idea of that having good case uses. I just don't know if this is one of them. Yeah, as far as like, okay, do I think these cards need to be limited in addition to all these other hits? Yeah, I think they do. Well, and also, like, again, with Zeus being limited, if they just committed to a Zeus limit, I really don't think Arclith would have had to go to 1. And I think Zeus is the card that needs to go to 1 before Arclith. Now, I have said in the past on the channel that I really enjoy Arclith. I hope that's not my bias shining through. I don't think it is. I try to be mindful of that when I do evaluations of this kind of a thing, but... But Demeter is probably a little more warranted. At least a little more. But again, we'll just have to see what happens, you know? There was a lot of speculation that Earth and Thunder are still just the best decks even after this list. I think that's probably the case before Moonrise. After Moonrise, it might be a little more of a shakeup. Well, it'll definitely be a shakeup. We'll just have to see how much of one it is, right? But I think that's going to be all for my thoughts on the new Elestrals restriction list. So thanks for watching this video. I super appreciate you as always. You're probably going to hear some commentary and upcoming deck profiles that's not super consistent because I recorded way ahead on them. Like, some of the videos you're going to see were recorded, like, I don't know, like, I want to say even 2 weeks ago some of them were. So you might be hearing me saying some of them like, oh, maybe if they limit Elichick or something like that. But so bear with me on that. But anyway, I think that's about all I got for this one. So this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out and also hoping that you have a fantastic day.